It's Real Estate Today with the Han team on 93.9 KPDQ. Now, our number in studio, should you want to get through, and I don't know why you wouldn't, is 503-786-9390. So we're talking with Gary Christensen. He's back with us. He was with us a few months back. He's from a company called Quality Appraisal. Web address is qualityappraisal.com. How did you get that? Oh, wow. How lucky is that happened to be available to you?
Yeah, Quality Appraisal wasn't available. So we went to the next, we added an A, and boy, there we go.
Well, if you're advertising in the Yellow Pages also, it puts you up front. Mm-hmm. But, I mean, when was the last time you picked up the Yellow Pages?
Yeah, I'm not.
You know what that's good for, the Yellow Pages these days? If you have a washing machine that on spin cycle kind of wobbles, you can tear a few pages out, fold them up, stick them under one of the legs. That's about it. So, Gary, how are you doing, man?
Great. It's great to be back.
Well, it's nice to have you here for sure. So you do appraisals. Who do you work for?
I work for myself. I have a small company with a couple of appraisers. I have an assistant and an office person, and we cover each side of the Willamette River, the greater Portland area, and even do a little bit in Vancouver, Clark County.
So, but I mean, by who do you work for? Do you work for realtors? Do you work for banks? Do you work for individuals? Who do you?
Yeah, it's mostly people that find me online. I started my business doing mostly work for lenders. You get onto lists with different banks and appraisal management companies, and I've moved away from that work, and I just do estates, divorces, courtroom testimony, and a lot of pre-listing, that sort of thing.
So when you do courtroom testimony, man, you have to be an actual quote-unquote expert.
Yes, yes, you do.
You're running your own company. You better be an expert because otherwise you'll be selling cars soon or something. Yeah. Well, very good. I'm sorry. Did you want to continue?
No, I was just going to say Gary's very qualified, and he just went through we were talking before the show, a very intensive upgrading on his credentials. You want to tell a little bit about that?
Well, I've been working towards a Appraisal Institute SRA designation, but what we were talking about before the show was their capstone course in that series is pretty intensive. It was a course that I had to fly down to Los Angeles and spend a week there with about, I don't know how many other appraisers, maybe 15 or 20 or so. And I saw grown men cry. This class was intense. You go to class every day for a week. You're in class all day. And then you go back to your hotel room in the evening and you write your demonstration report, each portions of your demonstration appraisal report each night up until, midnight or 1 o'clock in the morning. And then it's back to class the next day. And it's one of the most detailed appraisal report you'll probably ever perform as a professional. But it's a great practice to kind of bring everything together that you've learned.
Gary Christensen, part appraiser, part gladiator.
Well, and I just think that just reinforces your knowledge. And in any kind of thing that's related to real estate, we're all trying to learn more every day because it changes by the minute. And so I think that's important
absolutely.
to know that you have an appraiser that's interested in staying ahead of the market.
How long have you been doing this, Gary?
I started about 9 years ago.
Okay. And you how often do you have to go for extra schooling like this?
I've been far ahead of the curve for extra schooling. I'm always taking classes, but we have a certain amount that we're required to do each 2 years when we renew our licenses.
Oh, every 2 years you have to renew.
Right.
Okay. Right. Is there like a public hearing kind of a thing, or how does that work? I don't know.
Nope. We just show that we've passed all the classes, or a certain number of classroom hours, and submit the paperwork, pay the fees. Yeah, sort of thing. Stay out of trouble as long as we
answer the 10 questions at the end.
Yeah. Keep your nose clean, kid. Is that national or is that a state thing?
It's a state thing.
Okay. So do you have to do that in Washington as well?
Yes.
Okay.
I do it. I'm certified in both Oregon and Washington.
Okay. Very good. What do you do? What is an appraiser? Tell us what that.
What's the job of an appraiser?
What's involved?
We provide independent and unbiased opinions of value. Usually that's market value. There's other types of value, but most of the time appraisers are estimating market value. It's an appraisal. The important thing to remember about an appraisal is that it's a process. It's not the report. It's not the value. It's the process that you go through to get to an opinion of value. And it involves interviews, research, analysis. There's 3 approaches to value that appraisers can draw on: cost approach, the income approach, and the sales comparison approach.
You mentioned interviews with whom?
Real estate agents. That's probably our primary source of data, but parties involved with the transactions, because that's really probably the most important part of understanding the market is picking up the phone and talking to the people who are actually making the decisions. If you're appraising like a piece of vacant land or something, you may need to know not that just that property sold for $85,000. You might need to know that you needed a special type of foundation to build on that property. It was going to be more expensive to build than on another piece of property. You might want to know that they were going to have to extend the sidewalk down the street 30 feet in order to build on that property, and they were going to have to punch a sewer in there. And all those things are unique about that piece of land. And if you didn't know the backstory, you just saw that it sold for $85,000. I mean, that doesn't tell you the value of that land truly. So
interesting.
We get a lot of calls and a lot of emails now from appraisers on properties that we've sold, and they want to know a lot of those things. So I know that all goes into it. They'll call and say, well, did your seller pay any closing costs? What was the condition of the property? Because all you really have is what's on the RMLS.
Right.
They don't go out and look at each particular property in depth. So it's important for us all to work together. And I think that's an important thing for all realtors, to work with the appraisers, because they're working to help us.
Well, let me ask you about a specific case in a different state, because I sold a house in Utah and I had built a studio into it. Now that's different from a bedroom, although we counted it as just another bedroom when it's time to sell the house. But it had extra, I had doubled walls hanging on an RCA channel. I had extra insulation in the walls and all kinds of things to make it a soundproof room. Did that add any value to it, or is it just a bedroom?
Well, that's the $10,000 question that we're always trying to answer.
Actually, it was right about a $10,000 question.
Yeah, that's what we're always trying to answer when we're doing an appraisal. How is the thing to remember about appraisal value is it's the most probable value. It's not what one. So if you get another radio DJ who comes along and wants to buy that house, that studio might be much more valuable to that one individual. And that doesn't necessarily mean that that's the most probable sales price of that property. You just got lucky and found the one guy who's willing to pay a lot of money for that studio, because he's not going to have to put a studio in a different property.
Or if somebody wanted a soundproof home office, so they couldn't hear a baby crying and other stuff happening.
And exactly. So, sometimes, appraisers have to be very careful about making a quick assumption like that. I mean, how's the typical buyer going to see it? Are they going to see it as that, or are they going to see additional value that maybe we're not? You have to talk to people, find out.
Would it have been appropriate or inappropriate for me as owner to talk to the appraiser, or does that ever happen?
No, you should talk to the appraiser. Appraisers we're reporters. We're like the weathermen.
Because my real estate agent said, stay away.
Yeah, there's a lot of misconceptions about talking to appraisers, and appraisers we're hungry for data, and I don't speak for all appraisers, but I think all appraisers should be hungry for data and should be asking lots of questions and should be trying to talk to all the people involved and finding out.
You want to know where the bodies are buried, metaphorically. Let me say that, metaphorically.
Thank you.
Exactly.
And there's no other way to get that other than asking questions. So you're sort of a detective.
Yep. We're a detective. I like to say weatherman. We're like a weatherman. We're reporting and predicting on real estate market, and that's it.
But that's so important, because none of us on our side can do our job well without good appraisers, because we can value a property which we think we're good at.
Yeah.
Some of us are better than others, who knows? But when it comes down to the end, we can't close that property for the value that we placed upon it unless we're accurate enough that the appraisal comes out close or above where we're at.
Well, Gary, when you're talking to people, real estate agents, realtors, homeowners, whoever, you run the risk of them fudging it a little bit and kind of trying to move the needle a little bit.
Everybody's trying to, and appraisers are used to that. We have to filter the information, judge the source. This happens all the time. If a property, the more important, say, we use comparable sales. Everyone's understands that pretty well, and it seems we use comparable sales to estimate the value of properties. That's the fundamental thing in appraisal, and a lot of times I'll have one particular comparable sale that is really important to my analysis. So I want to know as much about that one comparable as I can because it's so important. So I'll contact both agents and talk to both of them on the phone. And sometimes I'll call the selling agent and they'll tell me, oh my gosh, that place was such a gem. It was beautiful. Then I talk to the buyer's agent and they say, that place was a dump. The owner is right now they've got the entire kitchen torn apart and they're redoing it. It had this and this and this problem. And so, we have to filter it. Then we're stuck with these two stories and we have to decide, okay, well, which one's more accurate or is it somewhere in the middle?
Are there ledges in technology? I'm thinking, there's the before a particular date, after a particular date, there was a leap of technology that would make a difference in the value of a home, say windows, insulation, roofing, whatever, those sorts of things.
Maybe I don't quite understand, like a particular date when...
oh, my goodness, Eureka, we just discovered this thing about windows, and now we're putting all this into houses, and houses built after this particular date.
Well, it's all about trends and, changing market perception. Things are always changing. Value's always changing. When we do an appraisal, it's as of an effective date and as of that date. And, things are going to change. And if you're talking 6 months down the road, a year down the road, things have probably changed. I just did a pre-listing appraisal for Gloria, and is that property on the market yet?
Monday.
Well, and I was worried about that because what's happened in the market since I did that appraisal for her?
Well, and that's why I met with them yesterday, and all the paperwork's signed. But I want to look at those.
Well, relook at what's listed because those active listings right now are key. Right now we're at the kind of the jumping off point for the market for the spring. And there's lots of new listings coming on the market. And if all of a sudden you have some new competition, say you were planning on listing your property at $300,000, and now all of a sudden you've got two new listings that came on the market at $290 that are very similar to your property, that can totally change where you want to be placed and where you're going to be competitive.
What a fascinating process. Talking with Gary Christensen from Quality Appraisal. His number, by the way, if you want to get a hold of him outside of the studio, 503-781-5646. Of course, I'll give that and his web address again before the show is over. You want to get through on the line and ask a question about appraisal, buying or selling real estate? 503-786-9390. Real Estate Today with the Hahn team on KPDQ. It's Real Estate Today with the Hahn team on 93.9 KPDQ. Get right through at 503-786-9390. We're talking with Gary Christensen today from Quality Appraisal. His website is, get this, qualityappraisal.com. That's tricky.
Easy to remember.
Tricky. 503-781-5646. That's his telephone number. When does an appraisal come along in the process of buying or selling a house? When does that typically happen?
It's usually right at the end.
Okay.
That's the appraisal is holding up everything right at the end. Mm-hmm. If the appraisal takes a long time, like right now, appraisers are really backed up with work.
Yeah.
And
because so many houses have been on the market because of spring?
Yep.
Is that right?
Well, and there's just not a lot of appraisers right now.
When you're talking about one of the jobs you do is you're working with comps, looking at comparable homes,
right.
Typical neighborhood within, I don't know, a half a mile, whatever it is, looking at homes that are built at about the same time, same square footage, that kind of stuff. When all of a sudden, like a spring situation, when the market has been so tight, and now you're tossing a bunch of houses on there, are you looking at what those houses are valued at by other appraisers, or do you have actual sales that have happened recently? Is it only sales? How does that work?
We're definitely not looking at the values of other appraisers.
Okay.
Assessment values, any other values, those are all other people's opinions. And, this is about developing and supporting our own opinion. So those are out.
Okay.
Sales, if there's not very many sales, we're stuck with looking at what is listed right now, what's your competition, and going back in time and using sales from the past.
Can you draw a curve based on those past sales and see that they're going up, and you go, well, it looks like the trend is this?
Yes, and we trend them. We make adjustments for time.
Yeah.
And even in a stable market, right now prices have been going up for the last. If we're speaking in general terms in the Greater Portland area, prices have just been going up. They didn't go up as much last year as they had the prior year, but prices are going up. But if you have a market that is stable in Portland, you're still on average, you still get a seasonal swing of about 5% from the low in January and February to the high in September, October, November area. The prices kind of fall off of a cliff right then, and they flatten out around January, February, and they make a steep climb back up into the summer months.
Well, how long is your appraisal good? What's the shelf life on that?
That's asked
5 minutes.
Yep. That's exactly it. I tell people it's that moment that, if my effective date is when I inspected the property, then it's good for that moment. But
it really is a snapshot.
It's a snapshot in time, and you have to analyze it from that regard. Now, banks will look at it as, okay, different banks will have different policies. They might be okay with an appraisal that's 6 months old or 3 months old. They might accept it and still use it. But from my standpoint, things are always changing, and you always have to look at what's going on in the market right now. And hindsight is 20/20. As you move ahead in time, like when we're making an opinion of value as of today, right now, most of our sales are a couple months old. So we're trending those up, and we're looking at the listings that are on the market right now, and how if we price the property today, how would it compete with those listings right now, and that sort of thing. But say we look at that date in a few months from now, and we look back on it, we might draw a different conclusion, because some sales that might have closed around that time or went pending right about the time of the effective date, that we didn't have access to that information at that time. So, things are always changing, and we're always having to be a student of the market and study it and figure out what's going on and try to analyze it as best we can.
If you're in a little town and you see there are two barbers in that town, you go to the guy who has the worst haircut, because you know that the other guy cut his hair. So the better one of the two is the one who gets. So your own particular case, do you get to appraise your own house in a situation like that? Or
if I was selling my own house and I wanted to know the value, then I would do the appraisal process and try to determine a value. But
would that be acceptable to the?
That would be acceptable for me.
Yeah.
And I could appraise. I can appraise it for my own purposes. Maybe I would be a biased party, but for any other purpose, for example, like for the banks or something, no, I couldn't appraise my own house. It would be hard to, we have to be able to convince the regulators, if we're audited on a particular file, that we were able to be unbiased. And if they look at that file and they see that that's your parents' house that you were appraising, and they say, how were you able to be unbiased on that? It might be a difficult question to answer.
Well, and I think that's one of the big things I really like about having the pre-listing appraisals, because it's just one more opinion, and I think that's important in our market today, because our market is so up and down, and it's been crazy for the last 2 or 3 years. And I just feel when I go out on a listing appointment, if I have people that either think I'm way too low or way too high, then I offer, let's get an appraisal. That's just another person that's analyzing our market, that we can be a little bit more assured that we get it right.
That appraisal is so small in the relation to what it's going to cost to sell that property. The amount you spend on that appraisal is so small, and it's an independent party. It's not the homeowner or the agent. We don't have any skin in the game. We're just looking at and analyzing the data. And appraisers don't know everything. Agents don't know everything. They both come up with a conclusion, and you put the two together, and you reconcile it. And you move forward with confidence, rather than, sometimes a homeowner will be way out in left field, and the agent has an opinion, but the homeowner's way out in left field. I'll have that agent oftentimes will call me and go, the homeowner's way over here, and I'm here, or I'd rather they don't tell me where they are, but what their opinion of value is on it. But they tell me that they're coming up with something very different than what the homeowner is, and they just want another set of eyes on everything. And I get that call almost every day, and I do a lot of those types of appraisals.
I just did the math, and I was thinking, you've done this. You were doing it for a few years before the housing bubble popped in like 2008. Yep. Oh, that must have thrown you into a tailspin. What that must have been like, because all of a sudden, I mean, we're off the charts here. There is no map.
Yep. It was difficult. The company that I was working for, not only did the market collapse and prices were declining, and all of a sudden we had these new things that were on the market. Short sales were everywhere. Foreclosures were everywhere. They were kind of taking over the market. They were different. A lot of appraisers didn't really understand how to analyze them or how to use them, when to use them, when not to use them, that sort of thing. What did they really tell us? So not only that, but the regulations for how appraisers dealt with banks changed at that time. And, a lot of appraisal companies that had a lot of appraisers working for them suddenly had no appraisers working for them. And I was caught up in that. I was working for a cousin who had a pretty good sized company. And all of a sudden, it used to be when the bank would send an appraisal order to an appraisal company, they would send them the order. But then after that happened, they no longer sent the order. It went to a third party, like an appraisal management company, who then assigned it to a particular appraiser, not an appraisal company. So now the management companies were picking the appraiser, and the appraiser no longer needed to work for a bigger company or organization.
Yeah.
So if I had a company that, and this is true today, this is one reason we don't do really lending work. I have no control over my business. So I have an appraiser in West Lynn. If I get an order for West Lynn, he lives in West Lynn. If I get an order for West Lynn, and this house is right next door to him, I can say, here, Jim, can you do this appraisal? And I'll take one of those other jobs that's right by my house, and we're better fit for those properties, and let's split that up that way. But it doesn't work that way with lender work.
Does that affect his bias, though, if he lives, say, on the same block? Because it's going to be affecting perhaps the value of his home.
No, that's not going to affect the value of his home. His opinion of value doesn't. We don't set the market. Gotcha. We just interpret the market, and he's in a much better place to interpret the market, living right there.
I would say, though, that housing bubble pop and the free fall that we went through must have been just a nightmare for you. I might have thought of becoming a McDonald's franchisee at that point.
Well, I think it pulled a lot of people out that weren't doing a good job.
Yes, it did. I think it did clean out the. And
you're in great shape. I'm thinking you're probably not going to run a McDonald's.
No,
in fact, you keep in shape even at the office, don't you?
That's
Yes.
good, Andy. You walked right into that one.
What do you do to stay in shape at the office? Come on, tell me.
Yeah, I guess you've probably read my blog post that I work out at a treadmill desk, and that was that
treadmill. Don't we all feel like we're there already?
That was one of my most popular. I think it was my most popular blog post ever. It went, kind of semi-viral. I learned a few years ago that sitting all day for like 8 hours has like the similar health effects as like smoking. It's really bad for you, and you can't just overcome it by working out in the evening, because when you sit all day long, your body changes and things happen the way it metabolizes, and
I notice it gets harder to knock me over because I'm wider at the bottom.
So I always felt like when I worked for 8 hours long, I felt like a lump after work. I had back pains, and now they're gone. My blood pressure's lower than ever. I feel alert all day. I don't need the caffeine anymore. My productivity is increased. When you go on a walking meeting with somebody, you just feel like the thoughts come to you. You can think much more clear. Well, it's the same way when you work at a desk and you're kind of moving and standing. The blood flow in your brain is moving, and you think better. I truly believe that. And I actually, when I jacked up my desk, I left my old desk underneath it so that I could move back to my old and sit once in a while. And in 2 years, only one time did I ever want to go back and sit at my desk, and that was and that was when I had the flu like a few months ago. I couldn't stand. But other than that, I don't miss my chair at all. And I've actually moved it out completely out of my office, and will never go back. A lot of people do just the standing desks.
Yeah.
But if you do that, there's still, if sometimes I stop my treadmill, or it stops on its own every 30 minutes, it's got a little shut off timer and I have to restart it. But sometimes I forget to restart it. And if the treadmill stops, all of a sudden you're slouching and you're leaning or something.
Oh.
But when you're walking, you stand up straight and you start moving, and everything works. It's the greatest thing, and it's one of the best decisions I've made in my life, and I recommend it to anyone who sits too much. But consult with your doctor. I'm not a doctor.
How fast does your treadmill go?
It's just a slow walk. It's about 1.4 miles per hour is what I go right now. When I first started on it, I was at like about 0.6.
So typing, writing?
Yeah, actually, everyone asks me about the typing, that could be hard. But after a day or two of doing it, you don't even notice it. And your body learns, and you're really not, your body doesn't move that much at a slow speed.
Hey, you put an extra 0 on my appraisal. Great, yeah. I like that.
Yeah, no, I see no difference in my typing from it. It's great. Sometimes if I have something small on the screen that I'm trouble seeing, I'll jump to the sides of the treadmill and stand and kind of lean into the screen to try to see what I'm looking at. But that's the only times.
That's Gary Christensen from Quality Appraisal, who has a treadmill desk, and we're talking about appraising your house or just the whole process of buying and selling a house. Our telephone number is 503-786-9390. I'll give you Gary's contact information again in a couple of moments, and of course Gloria Hahn's contact information, because after all, it is Real Estate Today with the Hahn team on KPDQ. It's Real Estate Today with the Hahn team on 93.9 KPDQ. The hour's just flying by. We're in our last segment right now. 503-786-9390 if you've been putting off calling because of whatever. Yeah, just got a few more minutes left to do it. Talking with Gary Christensen from Quality Appraisal, who apparently has a treadmill under his desk. And so if you want him to do an appraisal, you could run that by him.
Yeah.
Oh, Andy, you're too fast today.
Oh, boy. All right. By the way, Gary's contact information, 503-781-5646, or website is qualityappraisal.com.
So are there other services that you offer, Gary, other than just appraisals?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I do appraisal consulting. So I recently did an assignment for a developer in the West Hills. And he wanted to know, he was buying a house that is an old house, much too small for the area, beautiful location, panoramic view. And he wanted to know what kind of house, if he was built a house on this lot, what was going to bring him the most profit. So he didn't need me to do a full highest, and we call it, appraisers call it a highest and best use analysis, where we decide what's going to bring the highest profit to that piece of land. And he didn't need me to do that because he knew what it was going to cost to build the different scenarios. So all he wanted was, what's the value of if I build this type of house versus if I build this type of house versus if I build this type of house. So he gave me 3 different scenarios, and I gave him an opinion of value on each scenario, and then he can choose the one that's going to bring him the most profit. Another service that I offer that's kind of taken off a lot lately, I've been really surprised with, is home measurement services. So just this is mostly a service for real estate agents to help their listings look more professional, limit their own liability, make their closings more smooth, and hopefully increase the sales prices. One agent that I measured a house for recently said that I found an additional 491 square feet on his very expensive West Hills home. And he thought it helped the sales price of $100,000. And my measurements usually only cost about $125 for most homes. So.
Well, it's interesting to me because you think that whatever is on the deed, that's the number. I mean,
well, they don't put the square footage on the deed, but the county assessor keeps a record. But the county assessor's record could be based on some old information, and it's very often wrong. And in my experience, it's more often low. than it is high.
Yeah, I discovered that when I sold my home in Utah. It was the one that was on the county assessor's thing was significantly lower than whenever the realtor went through and measured everything.
And it's important to know that even if I measure the home and find out that it's smaller than what the county records say, that doesn't mean that it was a bad idea to have the measurement done. It's going to help the seller avoid some liability if they advertise their house too large.
Yeah.
And if the appraiser comes in after they say they get a pending offer, an appraiser comes in and now the house is smaller than what they had advertised it, then that could make the appraisal come in too low and jam up the works. It could also bring that buyer back with some new negotiating leverage that they didn't have before. Cause all kinds of problems. So even if it's high or low, you just want to know the right number and advertise it correctly. I think it's a really good service.
Would that change the number on the official county assessor's forms, and so the tax might be different? No,
that's the beauty of it too. That information is not provided to the tax assessor. It's only provided to the seller. And they'll put it in the multiple listing service and advertise it, but the tax assessor doesn't get their number out of the realtor's multiple listing service. I mean,
when you do that, Gary, do you measure the rooms or just the outside square footage?
I measure the outside square footage, and then I give the dimensions of each room because the RMLS asks for the dimensions of each room. So I try to put that on there to be helpful to the agents.
Well, I usually go measure all my rooms, but it's amazing to me how many listings don't show those room sizes. And buyers really like to look at that because if they have like a king-size bed, will it fit in that bedroom? And a lot of people can't visualize that. So if you know that room is a certain size.
Or you can hand them the buyer, and say, here's a sketch of the house by an appraiser, and you can take a look at it. It just makes the listing look more professional, and when it's all filled out, it's just one more competitive edge, just like getting nice photos for your listing.
Yep.
It has to be weird though when you get to like an odd shaped room. You got to be a math genius to figure that out, right?
Yeah, and I just put a general, length and width of the room if it's an odd shaped room, and there's a disclosure in the sketch that that those are for the purpose of listing and don't rely on making your couch fit or something. Don't sue me. Don't come back and sue me because that's not exactly the dimension.
Well, I've had, in my 20 years, I know of one lawsuit, and it was over 13 feet on a shop.
Really?
Yikes.
Yeah,
are you kidding me?
No, they sued because we had the dimensions of the outside of the shop, but somehow they were off, and it caused the shop to be smaller than what we had advertised it, and they sued and they won.
Oh, wow.
For what? I mean,
for 13 feet.
Are they talking about they bought something that value-wise?
Right. They said that they paid more for it than they would have had they had accurate information.
You know what? Appraisers, when we're valuing, they should have brought an appraiser into that courtroom because appraisers, when we're valuing property, we're not even that good. Buyers and sellers don't notice 50 square feet or 13 square feet. Nobody's that good. I mean,
yeah.
I know.
So,
it was a long time ago.
That's silliness.
Okay, we have only a couple minutes left, Gary. So what would you like to bring up? Do you want to talk about a silly story or an unusual home? Sure.
Appraisers have lots of silly stories. I did a YouTube parody video with Macklemore YouTube parody video called Portland Appraiser Shop. If everybody's heard of the thrift shop by Macklemore, so we did a parody, and we have a lot of the silly things that happen to appraisers. But there's I can kind of give you a laundry list of some of the crazy things I've seen. I've inspected the wrong house. Oh. I see a lot of illegal activities. Mm-hmm. I've fallen through at least 2 decks. I've had dogs chase me, other animals chase me, homeowners chase me, and police chase me.
Oh my goodness.
Even people don't realize homeowners see us. We drive around and take a lot of pictures of houses, and they see us pull up in front of their house and take a picture. I had a lady chase me from Rainier to Claskeneye, and she got her car in front of me in Claskeneye and got me to stop in the middle of the road and came back and confronted me about it, that I had taken a picture of her house. She thought I was stalking her. I had police pull me over. Wow.
Well,
I know. I used to do BPOs, and I got chased a couple times. That was a broker's price opinion. We'd go around and shoot pictures from the outside. Well, people are watching you when you're taking those pictures.
Yeah.
Well,
I guess
you look suspicious. Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess the craziest story that comes to mind is a sale where there had been a murder and a suicide just a few months before this property was put on the market. And the buyer's agent called me, and I was setting up the inspection to look at it. She warned me about it and said, you need to be careful and take somebody else with you. So I took another appraiser from my office. We set up the appointment. The house is out in the middle of the woods. And the owner said, meet me at the gate. And this is like a long gravel drive in the middle of the woods. And I met him at the gate. We go in. He unlocks the gate. He locks the gate behind us. And we look at each other and go, oh, no, this is not good.
And you hear a chainsaw start. You're like, hey, hold on.
Yeah, so we're out in the middle of nowhere. They've got kennels full of pit bulls. I know we're running out of time here, but...
That's a story we should have started earlier. We'll have to save that one for next time.
So is the video on your website, qualityappraisal.com?
You can go to my YouTube channel, Portland Real Estate Appraiser. We've got one section of the YouTube channel is funny videos. So there's that's Portland Appraiser Shop's the first one.
Gary Christensen from Equality Appraisal, and of course you got and it's qualityappraisal.com. And Gloria's cell number is 503-997-5745. We do it every Friday from 2 till 3. Real Estate Today with the Hahn team. Thanks, Gloria.
Thank you, Andy, and thank you everyone for
thank you.
listening. And thanks, Gary.
You're welcome.
God bless you, and have a great weekend.